Welcome, welcome. Thanks everyone for being here. Let's go ahead and dive in. Hey everyone, I'm Andrew. I lead strategy here at Knapsack. This is actually the first of our new field guide series where we are digging into some really more advanced use cases of Knapsack. Ideally aimed largely at our customers who are using it, but also for those that are really poking around trying to get a better sense of what it's like to use this day to day. That's really what this is about. So we're going to get a little bit deeper than we do in some of our typical, public demos and webinars. This session we're starting off with is, really focused on one of the both the core capabilities of Knapsack, but also sort of an interesting use case for it that lends into our sort of extensibility and customization, which is the ability to make custom content blocks, quite literally custom components for your Knapsack workspace. And so we're going to get into that in quite a bit of depth. Before we do that, we got some shameless plugs. We've got a whole bunch of these. Turns out we're not just doing the first one to stop there. We've got a whole series of these field guides we're going to be delivering on a variety of these topics that really come from our interactions with you, our customers, to hear, hey, what are things that we think, people could benefit from knowing about a little earlier, or we can do some more broad enablement around. And with that, so I'm joined by a couple of our wonderful solutions team members that spend even more time than I do directly with our customers in the trenches with them, helping them figure out the roadmap for their system, figure out how they use Knapsack. And so I'll let Jake and Britt both say hello. Britt, hi.
Hey everyone. Yeah, I've been with Knapsack for a few years now, solutions engineer. And yeah, Jake was my mentor. So yeah, I'm here to help answer any technical questions, kind of walk through some code today. So yeah, I'll pass it off to Jake.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jake Love, Senior Solutions Architect here. Been working with design systems since before they were called design systems, back in the atomic design era. Anyways, thrilled to be here. Excited to talk about solutions. That's what we do. So there we go.
We're going to be solutioning on the fly. Awesome. So what we're going to get into a little bit of, what's the why here? When would I use custom content blocks? What's the use case? I want to make sure we touch on, some of the fundamental concepts, not just of custom content blocks, but of Knapsack. Really, in some ways, what we're going to show you here is nothing special or crazy. It's more about how we're using core functionality than, some secret feature you didn't know about. We're going to get into some good examples of those, and then I'm going to turn it over to Britt to walk through a little more of the how do I actually do this stuff. And we'll talk through some of the best practices, some of the advanced concepts, pull some of the threads that come up here, and leave plenty of time for any questions that come up. So again, in the Zoom, you've got chat, you've got Q&A. Please use those liberally, and we'll try and save a lot of time to get to all your questions. So when should I use custom content blocks? So crazy rocket science answer here. It's when the things we already have in the platform don't quite do what you need or what you want. Right. So we've got a whole slew of content blocks. It's grown a lot over the years. It's evolved. We'll show that in a second. If you're not familiar, very modular kind of Notion-like content editing system. And sometimes people don't have what they need, or they want to do something differently, right? I want my color swatches to look a really certain way. All right, cool. You can do that. And so, some cases here we see a lot. Someone wants to show maybe a use case of their component where they're like showing a component in some larger view. They're showcasing a few components, but not in a way that we support out of the box. Great, you can build a display component for that. Maybe you want to do something where a component is really interacting with the live data stream. And we don't have that maybe in every touch point because we're saving our API rate limits. Great, you can build a custom component that does that. We've got, again, I want my documentation to do something custom or look a certain way. Lots of flexibility here. And so we're going to show you a few of those use cases. Just to really hammer it home, again, we're not doing anything special functionally here in terms of Knapsack beyond the core of what we do, which is, in my mind, when you have a Knapsack workspace, you can take the source assets, design and code, tell Knapsack where to find source stuff, pull it in, have a new system of record for that, and then use that to create things. Create docs, if you want, create prototypes, ship end user experiences. So the whole goal here is to make it easier to figure out how we can make stuff and then enabling making stuff with what we have. We've been doing it for years through better documentation, dynamic tools. Now we're doing it more through hands-on creative tools, prototyping. We're going to see even more of that in the future. But this whole ability of connect the source assets, use source assets, That's actually the same thing we're going to do here. And we're really going to focus on this part, not surprisingly, if you follow us. How do we connect source code and use it to create something? In this case, powerful documentations, reference tools, reference sites, or tools for our system management. And so let's get into a couple of examples here. So I'm on our demo workspace here, and collapsing Zoom utilities. So just to go through that basic thing, the basic sort of Knapsack core concepts, let me go into something like my card, right? And so, the way Knapsack works is we pull in source components. I'm in an edit environment, and I can look at, this is the package, this is the export, this is the source design system coded component I'm using to power, in this case, our playground. And then, of course, we've built different variations of this. You can connect all sorts of demos, whether it's a demo I make through editing props here in the UI, custom demos, which an engineer can connect, where it's a really bespoke asset, where maybe I overrode something or I wanted to show a unique use case. I might show some of those. I can actually generate these from Figma if I have all my components and props aligned to my Figma components. So lots of options here. But once I have these things created with my source code, I can then use them throughout my workspace. And so maybe I want to add a subpage for, put this up front. We'll call this guidelines. Can't use my own keyboard. Call this guidelines. We'll go ahead and put in, let's see, I've got my template playground. And so this is where I can go in and choose from all these different things I have. In this case, I was looking at my card, and I was looking at that action card. And then, I have lots of options for how I want to present this. Maybe I don't want to show the form. I do want to keep the code snippet, but this is a little big. Maybe I want to make this, medium, and I want to add some text next to it. We'll say, anatomy of a card. We'll write some prose. And, we have all these options. One of the options we actually have in here, silly, let's hide the table of contents. Get detailed. All right. So, but one of the other options we have here in this template playground is seamless. And so what this does is I'm now using this component basically in the context of my design system documentation. I'm using this component as a component on my page, right? And that's the specific workflow or mechanism of using components that we're going to lean into here. And so let's take the same functionality and look at something a little more custom. And so we have this admin section, which a lot of our customers do. You can go in here and make hidden pages so that they don't show up to the end users. You can lock them down by different role. So we've done that. We've had hidden admin section, and in here we have a couple of different custom content blocks. Let me go first into the icon viewer. And so the same thing here. I've got a component that I told Knapsack where to find. In this case, it's actually a file path. It's not a package path. And that's common because this isn't something we're probably shipping in our system, right? This is the component using a lot of real, components, or in this case, importing icons, all these icons. So I'm using the real icons, the real source assets, but I've made a component. I shouldn't say Brit made a component that lets you interact with these in this very functional way. And so I don't want this to live in a playground. I want this to live in my site. So what I'm going to do here, keep this hidden out of the way. You'll notice we also excluded it from things like my component status or my overview, so we can kind of hide it. But then we can go in and say, maybe in tokens, make a new page. I'm going to call this iconography. And in this, I'll spare you all my text editing. Let's just go in and recreate what I did before. Template playground. I'm going to choose my icon viewer, and I've got that in React. We've got one demo, and let's just go ahead and make it seamless right at the bat. And obviously, I can do a lot more with this page, but now let's see what it looks like to a user. This is, as far as I can tell, this is a piece of functionality in Knapsack. I've now got the ability to go in and check out, how do I implement the bold, large chevron up icon viewer? Got my SVG copy, I got the name. And so I just added a great piece of functionality in my design system workspace. And you didn't have to submit a feature request or wait for us to prioritize it or build it. We do that thing quickly when we can, but we like to give users power where we can. So that's the overview of how you do this. Just one of the use case that I want to highlight here. Also pretty awesome. we have this ability to interact with other data sources. And so if my browser wants to load, let's refresh this. We also have the ability to, one of the other, here we go. One of the other components I had in that admin section, if you checked, was the accessibility dashboard. Same thing. Got a playground here. You can see the code for it. And we've got that included in an accessibility page. And so I've made this little piece of UI that, the way this would work is as you're doing releases, you'd have testing in your CI workflow, your deployment workflow, and you could build all kinds of rules, whether or not it's able to deploy and pass. But in this case, a build went out, updated the Knapsack workspace when it released new system assets, and it's saying you've got some issues. And it's surfacing that here in this one clear area. And so same kind of idea. We built a custom component. This one interacts with some data, and then we include it in our workspace. I think Jake has some other ones we can show around, like monitoring status of different deployments. So, really taking this idea of surfacing, designing code, and bringing everyone into an engineering workflow to an even greater level in terms of what it can enable for clarity. Right, it's what we talk about all the time. How do you create clarity across your organization so everyone knows what's going on, what each other have, what it looks like, how it works, and we can cut down on a lot of that expectation gap. And so custom content blocks in many ways are just one more way to do that, enable you to build whatever you need to give clarity to those cross-functional teams. So let me pause there for a second. I know Jake's excited. Couldn't even keep his emojis out of the chat. He's so excited. I like it. I'm going to turn it over to Britt to talk a bit more about how do you really do this, especially for any technical team members that are on this call or watching this, and recording. There's a little more to get into around, okay, but what am I really doing here, right? We've connected code components to Knapsack, but what's special or different about custom content blocks? And so let's turn it over to that. Keep questions coming. We'll come back to questions at the end. I think we've got another 25, 30 minutes here. So, Britt, you want to show us how the custom content blocks are made?
Yeah. So Knapsack, you can use it as a development tool. It's not just a place where you connect things. So I knew we had icons. I knew we wanted a way to show them. I started looking at a bunch of different design systems out there to get some inspo. And then from there, I just kind of built this icon viewer up piece by piece, and just started extending it. And while I was doing that, I had it connected in Knapsack at that time. So I could use Knapsack while I was developing the component. Also where it's going to live eventually. I mean, Knapsack is just an application, like it's just like any other app. So it's really, the sky's really the limit with what you can do and come up with. So yeah, I'll just jump into the code real quick, and we can take a look at the practical, like where things live and the connection there. So, because there's some things to consider. So, and I know Jake will go over this, but these are components that you don't want to ship with your component library. They're just purely for documentation and inside of Knapsack. So you might, I didn't do this in this case, but if I jump into my source, you can see Knapsack's hanging out up over here. I have my React folder, components, and this is where I have my icon viewer. It's just a component, nothing special, using some states and effects to manage, what icon selected, is it large, small, bold. So then I got that working. My next step would probably be to move this into like its own demo directory, so it's not hanging out with my other components. I'll get to that eventually, but once I have that component, all I need to do is just go into Knapsack. I'm going to go under the admin section where I have the accessibility dashboard that Roman showed. And, I just need to create a pattern page, and then just connect my template like I would any other component. So it's going to tell me it's already connected, which I love that feature about Knapsack. And then I'll just give it a title here. All right, cool. So yeah, that's basically it. I connected this and then passed it off to Andrew, and he actually embedded it in the documentation. So, anytime you get requests from people who say it'd be really cool if, we had a way to view icons, or like more detail around color swatches, you can just kind of riff on that and come up with different components to help, the communication, as Andrew said, and convenience, because now don't have to, question anything. You can just come in here and copy the code. So that was just a big improvement that I wanted to make around icons. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's basically it.
one of the takeaways there, I had a conversation with a customer yesterday around a similar topic, which was, hey, we want to use prototyping. We want to build some custom templates that we use within our prototyping UI with slots for certain areas and more advanced layouts. And it's another case where it's try to make it sound not too Knapsack specific, because really what we're talking about is I build a component and I connect it to Knapsack, and that component, maybe it has slots, maybe it has props, whatever you want, right? Maybe it's a very fixed, static, more implementation of something. Same idea, right? And so we're that core idea of like you have a workspace, you connect code to it, and then you use that code to make stuff. I keep re-emphasizing that because that is the core of really all of Knapsack, right? Whether you're going to ship that code out to be used in a system, whether you're going to use that code just to make prototypes, that's really what we are continuing to build more and more upon is pull stuff in, use it to make things more easily that are closer to the thing that's going to ship, right? That's moving this whole creative process much closer to what's going to ship. And that's, again, all the same concepts we're leaning into here. Jake, what else should we be aware of as we think about like, okay, it's the same thing I was doing before, but where is it maybe different, or where there's some maybe other things to think about here?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think Brittany called some of those things out immediately, which is that, oftentimes if you have a release process, you got NPM packages, right? You don't really want to muddy up those waters. And so one of the things that you can also do, right, you can create a separate package for it. So if you've got like a workspaces directory, you could add a separate package for those demos. The other thing too is that if you're publishing those packages using things like the files key in your package JSON, you can create a demos directory and just not include that in the files that you're publishing, the NPM packages. So that's one thing off the top that's pretty good to know. Another thing is that, if you get into sort of the next level of these things, which I'm going to show here, I think in a moment, which is using your components to essentially build custom apps that you can then also embed into Knapsack and sort of have a seamless experience. There's certain things that you want to be aware of, and that is if you have an app where, you need some kind of authentication, you want to consider, adding secrets to CI/CD. If you're using some of the things that we provide out of the box, like some Heroku hosting and things like that, we'll also want to make sure that those secrets are up on Heroku. But again, if you have that locally in your environment, right, you got it on CI/CD secrets and Heroku and their secrets, then essentially you can have your local app building, embed it right inside Knapsack, and then it's available on all of your platforms. So we'll look at that in just a moment. And then the last thing I'll say too is that there's lots of ways to cut this cake. And so, if a fully custom icon viewer is not capable right away today, there are things that you can do. I call them nap hacks. It's kind of a funny term. Yeah, but it's basically all of our data is stored in JSON and YAML, and it is predictable right now. And we're looking at opening up our API soon, so there'll be some more formalized ways to access that API. But in this point, if you've got certain data or certain demos, and let's say that you've got SVG icons, it's totally feasible and easily to do that if you add an SVG directory someplace in Knapsack, right? You run a build process, you can actually inject the manifest of those SVGs inside of the data, inside of Knapsack patterns. So then you could use things like the data variations component and get a grid as well. It won't be nearly as robust as what Brittany had, but point there is to say there's lots of ways to cut the cake, lots of things to do with these advanced integrations, and it's really exciting. The sky is the limit for most of this. And so with that, Andrew, if you don't have anything else, I'll go ahead and sort of show the custom app experience.
Yeah, get into it.
Okay, we're gonna share my. Where's the desktop 2? I've sort of created this apps directory here, and I've added this deploy status. Now this is a Create React app. This is from an older demo, so there's a lot of people might just look at this and say, "Hey, isn't that deprecated?" Yeah, but this still works for this exact demo, and the concept is perfect. And so the idea is if you've got an application, right, you can create it simply in your app.js or your index.js. Because it's in your design system, you can pull in aspects of the system. You can pull in design tokens here. You can pull in your own components and build an entire dashboard. Now, this is basically, a table, and there's some dynamic aspects to this. But what this will do is it allows teams, especially non-technical folks, to see the status of deployments or to view the deployments. It's a pretty powerful thing. So now, of course, there's a bunch of other things here, like some npm packages, some builds and stuff. But at the end of the day, I run a build. And what this is going to do is it's going to build us a static bundle into the Knapsack public directory in here, which allows us to be able to um, serve static files, images, assets, and things. And so if you build a app and you can build it into this public directory, well, you can run that. And so if I do a npm run start to fire up Knapsack locally, we'll wait till we see our rocket ship. There's our rocket ship. Open up localhost. If I can get this over here. Okay. So we'll go to the admin section. I'll go ahead and also do an add new. Let's do adding a page. I'm just going to call this deployments. Add a page in here. And then using our content block system like we talked about before, I can go and find our iframe tool. And again, because this is serving from our public directory, it's at the root. So if I just go to deploy, oops, spell it right. Oh, there you go. Deploy status, right? There you go. Hits the GitHub API, does an authentication, and lets us know. Looks like we got one building here. We've got a couple of these also that have just been past completed, right? Some are completed, but they failed, so there's not really a build here. Again, totally custom. So if we want to throw our own iconography in here, if we wanted to throw our own components and maybe not have a tabular data, right? Maybe this would be in a list view of some kind, right? The sky is the limit. And again, this right here provides everyone on your team, especially non-technical users that might be submitting code, or not submitting code, sorry, submitting pull requests to see exactly the state of the build without having to worry about, do I have a GitHub login? How do I log into GitHub, right? So it just kind of gives you this right here. And then if you wanted to, you click the deploy and it takes you to that deploy. So that's kind of the full round trip. So, Britt showed the custom component side of things. Oops, knocking over things on my keyboard. Britt showed the custom component kind of things. This is sort of like the next level above that, which is like pulling it all together into a custom app and then serving it seamlessly inside of Knapsack. So that's what I got.
I love it. I mean, this is, again, the core, one of the core concepts of Knapsack is bringing everyone together around shared tooling, shared workflows. And, there are things that some teams aren't used to being exposed to, but can really benefit from. And so I'm not one to say this doesn't take some change management, some new process, some behavior, maybe culture change, but the ability to say, hey, we're all working together on a shared process to create a commonly valuable outcome. This type of custom app, custom content block allows everyone to have that more clarity, to have that, ability to communicate better, to really work more collaboratively, break down those silos, something I know we've all been trying to do in every facet of our business for years. So this is awesome, Jake. Appreciate this, and Britt for the more detailed walkthrough. We got a little bit of time here, so open it up to questions. One of the questions I see here is, are there limits to what we can do? Yes, there's always limits to what we can do. There are parts of our application that are core to the structure of what we deliver as a SaaS company. So at least today, you can't customize your entire navigation, right? You can't cut out the nav and put your own nav and put it on the footer. But what we've tended to find is, there is a lot of customization, at least in the workspace, of things that really represent your brand, and then the ability to customize how teams interact with the system, understand the system, supporting those workflows with that clarity, with that really information flow. That's what this really unlocks, to a point where using your own nav component or other element here or there, starts to become less and less valuable, because cutting out that human expectation gap, cutting out the, things that lead to painful QA and revisions that we've all lived through for a few decades. That's the more valuable thing to focus on. So we'll of course continue to broaden this idea of extensibility in the platform, but the ability to use your own components or customize the UI, is valuable. And I'll also throw out, there's a use case we've seen here that maybe is less pragmatic, but very real for enterprise teams, which is stakeholders expect to see a certain thing a certain way, right? We have plenty of cases where, listen, we are often a build versus buy consideration for teams that use us. And if they're thinking of building before they bought this, they may well have, a approved Figma comp. It wouldn't be the first time, an approved Figma comp of what their doc site's going to look like, right? And in that case, maybe you want to spend the resources to make your color swatches look a certain way, to make your code presentation, literally the code block, look a certain way. We've seen it all, right? And it really comes down to what's the cost benefit to you. You can spend the resources and make some custom stuff. People recreate our content blocks because that's the reality of enterprise. It's just got to hit a certain thing for the certain person to get the approval, to get the budget, to get the headcount, whatever it is. So, there's a lot of reasons you may want to use this. It may be very pragmatic. They may be more on that visual side, but that doesn't matter. Our job is to give you flexibility within this platform. Cool. Well, if there aren't other questions, thank you all for spending a little bit of your lunch hour or your late morning or wherever you are, a little bit of your time with us. Appreciate you tuning in. Excited to bring you more of these, and please give us your feedback here or at hello@knapsack.cloud or to your account team. Always curious to hear more about what you would benefit from, so we can create some more of that valuable content. So thank you all. Hopefully, we'll see you again soon.